Hi everybody, Jack O'Malley with you with an update on what's going on in Lansing this week. Kind of a quiet week. I mean, things are happening, but not necessarily any massive issues bubbling up right at the moment. But obviously important things, right? They're important to somebody, and so for various reasons. So I want to touch base with you on a couple of things. Well, let's just start. This one I thought was interesting because coming from the 101st District, agriculture is an important part of my district, and it is the state. It's the second highest, largest product in industry in the state, agriculture, to the great state of Michigan. And one of the issues that we see especially is with farms and families, and do we have someone to necessarily pass the farm down? And, the good old days, the family farm got passed on. Well, maybe that's not exactly the way things are happening these days. So, but how do we keep these farms producing, right? And how do we make that happen? I remember when I first moved up to northern Michigan in 1984, there was the whole cherry farm issue, and so-and-so was looking to retire, but the family didn't want to take it over. So here were these cherry farms that were sold for housing projects and developments and things like that. So how do we sustain this farming culture and the food that we need to eat, right? So this bill would allow a tax credit for passing on agricultural assets like land, livestock, and machinery to the next generation of farmer. Not necessarily the next family member, but to the next generation of farmer. These bills are in the Senate. The average age of a Michigan farmer is 56 years old, with the largest number of farmers in the state falling between the ages of 55 and 65. That's interesting. So farmers younger than 35 years old make up just 9% of the countrywide farmer population. So under this legislation, as proposed by Senator Lasada, an established farmer could obtain a credit of 5% of whatever, or of whatever's lower, the sale price of the farm or the fair market value of an asset up to $32,000. The point is, this legislation is intended to help folks who want to get into farming but aren't necessarily in the farm family, so to speak. So interesting that I guess this type of legislation has been used and is working in a couple of other states. But the idea is we need to keep farms, right? That's how we produce our food. It doesn't just miraculously appear on the grocery shelf. So as our population ages, how do we move all of this forward? So this is a piece of legislation that is being looked at, and it's interesting. It's outside the box, and hopefully it works. And again, it's been tried, I guess, in a couple other states, and it is showing success. So it's out there, and just something to think about. Again, when we talk about all the things that are on the docket, farming is probably not one of the ones that come up in the average family discussion, but it's massively important to sustaining life and the economy of the state of Michigan, right? Farmers, we need them. Let's see. This is one that came from my colleague John Roth in the 104th District. Just a stunning story. This story reads like something you'd see, on a TV drama. This is a fairly adult comment here, so I may be using a few terms that are all legal and clinical, but you might, what? So I just give you a heads up, all right? In some ways, the topic of this is maybe PG-13, all right? A Traverse City area woman, and this story, by the way, I'm taking from the Mirrors News Agency. A Traverse City woman told lawmakers about how her mother's fertility doctor impregnated her with his sperm as opposed to the DNA of either the legal father or the family's backup donor. That's right. Jamie Hall, 63 years old, spoke to the House Health Policy Committee. Dr. Philip Pevin was a renowned Southeast Michigan doctor for over 40 years. He assisted couples experiencing trouble with conceiving. Her discovery came when she used DNA testing to confirm for herself that she was 100% Scottish as she grew up presuming. Instead, she discovered that she was 50% Scottish and 50% Jewish. Where did this come from? She did a little digging. She was born in 1959, and they found a family friend who agreed. So Dr. Pervin told Hall's parents that she should secure a donor to help in this situation. They found a family friend who agreed to it, and Mom went through the procedure. She was born. Well, she since nailed down that her biological father was this doctor who is now believed to have substituted his own DNA into hundreds, if not thousands, of women from the 1950s through the 1980s. It was not my mother's donor. It wasn't my father. It was my mother's own doctor. Think about that. Hall testified in support of 5 bills that would make it a felony to intentionally lie or misrepresent the facts of an assisted production. Doctors who perform a switcheroo, if you would be looking at 5 years, $50,000. And it goes on to say she met with this guy who's now 105 years old. And she said she's met 10 siblings since this all came out. Unbelievable that this happened, but I know there were adoptions earlier. There's a story of a doctor that did that, told mothers that their baby had died at birth and then adopted the child out. This is crazy stuff, but this bill would make that a felony. There's nothing on the books about that now. So I guess I was not there, but I hear the testimony just had everybody in stunned silence as she told her story. And what a crazy, heartbreaking story it was. And this guy, at least, I don't know if he's still alive, but this doc wasn't. At least she was able to talk to him when he was like 105 years old. Wacky. So, there's it's not a when you come into the legislature, you don't say, "Oh, I've got to do this bill about fertility," and then you find out like this when you're here. It is an interesting situation. Things are always changing and happening. So this one is from our Oversight Committee last Thursday, and we're following up with this, another story tomorrow on this in Oversight. So I'll report back next week. But last week we sat and listened to James Freed, the Port Huron City Manager, who talked about how MIOSHA came in during the pandemic with a claim of unsafe work environment that an employee supposedly had made. And the city of Port Huron said, okay, here's all our files, here's where we're at, we got video, we can prove that this isn't true. And basically, a long story short for these purposes, MIOSHA basically said, yeah, there's no problem here, we don't find anything, but yet they still filed a complaint. When the city asked for an appeal, they basically just rubber stamped the original approval. Turns out that they had destroyed some records, which they tend to do. Just in general, that's their policy, which is terrible. You've got to retain records. Again, I can't go into all the details right here, but it's pretty amazing. Now, in fairness, we ran out of time last week, and the director of MIOSHA was not able to speak to hear his side of the story, right? So tomorrow, Thursday, we're going to have another company in that shows a system of abuse from the folks at MIOSHA when it comes to enforcement. Now, again, I'll get calls of being a weenie on this, but I think you have to say, like I said, we didn't hear from the director of MIOSHA yet. We need to hear from him, right? That's fair. You've got an accusation. You need to move forward and hear from that person. But I will say this, that the idea of MIOSHA is a good one. Many a day they are making sure that people are safe on the workplaces. The city manager of Port Huron said, making sure that ladder is bungee corded to the wall in a safe way so it doesn't fall on anybody. That's important stuff. But as we saw during the COVID thing, MIOSHA became an enforcement, a punisher, and in some cases forced small business, because of the rules that the governor had set up, put businesses into the job of enforcement. So again, overall, MIOSHA does, and the people of MIOSHA do good work. The problem is there is that possibility and that availability for going above and beyond or overboard in your execution of the rules, and you need to be able to explain why you did it, right? So we're going to have testimony on Thursday from another group, another business that has issues with MIOSHA. Hopefully we'll hear from the director here soon. And again, we ran out of time last week. That's why he was there, but we couldn't hear from him as our time ran up and we had to get to session. So I'll keep you informed and in the loop on this one, but I think it's a very important area that we're investigating because MIOSHA became, whether they wanted to or not, became almost a blunt object used by the administration when it came to enforcing COVID rules. And that ultimately is one of the biggest issues that I think many citizens have with how the governor and her administration handled COVID, the heavy-handedness of all of this. So I'll update you after we hear from this next group and keep you in this loop. But I want you to know that it is something that our Oversight Committee is investigating. And pretty amazing, this story out of Port Huron. It's in the news. You can go back and look for stories on it. You'll see that even when the Attorney General finally got involved, they dismissed the charges. There's nothing here, MIOSHA. Why are you continuing this? So it's an interesting case, and we're on it, and we'll stay on it. So we'll keep an eye on all of that for you, and I'll keep you in the loop. So those are just some of the things happening in Lansing this week. Just wanted you to know what's going on. I always appreciate you taking the time to stop by and give this a watch, and I'll always try and bring you up to speed on what's going on in Lansing. Of course, if you're a constituent and you want to get in touch with me, my contact information, it's easiest to find at repomalley.com. Email, phone number, all that good stuff is there. All right? Till next week, take care. Be safe.